The whistle of a harsh Montana wind carried through the valley as Isaac Adams stared out over the expanse of his ranch, eyes as hard and weathered as the leather of his worn saddle. It was 1876, and 3 years had passed since he buried his wife Sarah beneath the cottonwood tree that stood sentinel at the edge of his property. 3 years of silence in a house that once rang with laughter. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the land as Isaac moved methodically through his chores, the repetitive motions keeping his mind occupied and his heart numb. His children, 10-year-old James and 8-year-old Elizabeth, worked alongside him, their small faces solemn beyond their years. They had learned quickly to match their father's silence, to exist in the quiet grief that had become the foundation of their home. "Pa," James said, his voice soft as he tugged at Isaac's sleeve. "The chickens are all fed." Isaac nodded, placing a calloused hand briefly on his son's shoulder. "Good work, son." The words were sparse, functional, like everything else in their lives had become. Elizabeth appeared at his other side, her dark hair so like her mother's braided neatly down her back. "I collected the eggs, 6 today. Thank you, Lizzie." He turned away, unable to look at her eyes for too long. Sarah's eyes stared back at him from his daughter's face, and the pain was still too raw, too real. The sound of an approaching wagon drew his attention. Isaac squinted against the morning light, making out the familiar outline of Henry Whitman's delivery wagon. Henry made the journey from town every couple of weeks, bringing supplies and whatever mail had arrived for the outlying ranches. "Morning, Isaac," Henry called as he pulled the horses to a stop. "Got your supplies and a letter from back east." Isaac nodded, reaching for the crates of goods. "Appreciate it." Henry hesitated, then leaned forward on his seat. "Also brought news. Doc Peterson's niece arrived last week. She's taking over the schoolhouse come Monday." Isaac barely acknowledged the information with a grunt. The town had been without a teacher since old Miss Harkins died last winter. It made little difference to him. His children hadn't attended school since Sarah's death. He couldn't bear to be parted from them, couldn't risk losing them too. "Might be good for the young'uns to get back to their studies," Henry ventured, watching as James and Elizabeth peered curiously from behind their father. "We do well enough here," Isaac replied curtly, effectively ending the conversation. Henry sighed but didn't press the issue. "Well, that's all for today. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time." He flicked the reins and the wagon rumbled away, leaving behind a cloud of dust and the lingering suggestion that hung in the air like an accusation. That night, after the children were asleep, Isaac sat at the rough-hewn table, Sarah's letter in his hands. He'd read it countless times since her death, her final words to him, written while he was away buying cattle, never knowing she would fall ill before he returned. "Take care of our babies, my love. Make sure they know joy. Make sure you remember it too." Joy. The word seemed foreign now, like something from another life. He folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his shirt pocket, close to his heart where it always remained. Tomorrow would be the same as today. Work, survival, silence. It was enough. It had to be. The following afternoon, Isaac was repairing a section of fence when the sound of hoofbeats approached. He straightened, hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip, a necessary caution in these parts. A single rider appeared over the rise, and Isaac's brow furrowed at the unexpected sight of a woman on horseback, riding with confidence across his land. She reined in her chestnut mare as she neared, and Isaac was struck by her direct gaze. Her hair was a rich auburn, escaping from beneath a practical hat, and her riding clothes, while modest, suggested Eastern origins. "Mr. Adams," she called, her voice clear in the still afternoon air. "That's me," he replied, wariness evident in his stance. "You're on private property, madam." She dismounted with practiced ease, revealing herself to be of average height but carrying herself with unmistakable purpose. "I'm Rebecca Jones, the new schoolteacher. Dr. Peterson is my uncle." She extended a gloved hand. "I've come about your children." Isaac ignored her outstretched hand. "My children aren't attending school." Rebecca lowered her hand but not her gaze. "May I ask why not? Education is vital, especially out here." "We manage our own learning," Isaac replied stiffly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." But Rebecca Jones was not so easily dismissed. She stood her ground, the wind tugging at loose strands of her hair. "Mr. Adams, I understand you've suffered a loss. Your children need more than just survival skills. They need to learn to grow to—" "You understand nothing," Isaac interrupted, his voice sharp. "You've been in these parts, what, a week? You don't know me or my children or what we need." A flicker of something not hurt but determination crossed her face. "You're right, I don't know you. But I know that children need education, community, and opportunities beyond what one man, however capable, can provide." The confrontation might have escalated had James and Elizabeth not appeared from around the barn at that moment, curious about the visitor. Their eyes widened at the sight of the unfamiliar woman. "Hello there," Rebecca said, her voice softening as she addressed them. "You must be James and Elizabeth." Elizabeth stepped forward, shy but curious. "How do you know our names?" Rebecca smiled warmly. "I'm Miss Jones, the new teacher in town. I know all my potential students' names." "We don't go to school," James said matter-of-factly, moving to stand protectively near his sister. "Not yet," Rebecca replied with a gentle confidence that made Isaac's jaw tighten. "But I hope you will." Isaac stepped between the teacher and his children. "Miss Jones was just leaving," he said pointedly. Rebecca met his gaze squarely. "I'll be at the schoolhouse every day, Mr. Adams. Classes start Monday at 8 o'clock sharp." She turned to the children. "I do hope to see you both there." With that, she remounted her horse with the same fluid grace and with a nod to Isaac, rode away, leaving him standing in the dust with his children looking up at him with something he hadn't seen in their eyes for a long time. Hope. "Can we go, Pa?" Elizabeth asked, her small voice hesitant. Isaac looked down at his daughter, at the longing in her expression, and felt the familiar pain of Sarah's absence. How could he protect them if they were miles away in town? "We'll see," he said, the non-answer buying him time. "Go finish your chores now." That night, sleep eluded him. Rebecca Jones's words echoed in his mind, challenging his careful isolation. He'd kept his children close, safe, but at what cost? Sarah's letter burned against his chest, her plea for joy a constant reminder of his failure. Monday morning arrived with a clarity that seemed to mock Isaac's sleepless night. He went about his chores mechanically, aware of his children's subdued demeanor. They had not mentioned school again, had not dared to ask, but their disappointment hung in the air like the heavy scent of rain before a storm. As they sat at breakfast, Isaac found himself studying their faces, James's serious expression as he methodically ate his porridge, Elizabeth's downcast eyes as she pushed her food around her bowl. They were growing up in the shadow of loss, in the silence of his grief. Was this what Sarah would have wanted for them? "Get your things," he said suddenly. The word surprising even himself. James looked up, confused. "Pa, if we're going to town, we need to leave now to get there by 8, Isaac explained, his decision made in that moment. Elizabeth's face transformed with joy. "We're going to school," Isaac nodded, his throat tight. "For today, we'll see how it goes." The ride to town was filled with an excitement he hadn't witnessed in years. Elizabeth chattered about what she might learn, while James tried to maintain a dignified interest, despite the anticipation that brightened his eyes. Isaac remained silent, fighting the anxiety that clawed at his chest at the thought of leaving them. The schoolhouse stood at the edge of town, a modest building with a newly painted red door. Several children were already playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the morning air. Isaac felt his children's eagerness as they approached, saw how they straightened in their saddles. Rebecca Jones stood on the steps, welcoming children and parents alike. Her hair was neatly pinned back, and she wore a simple blue dress that somehow emphasized the warmth of her smile. That smile widened when she spotted the Adams family approaching. "Mr. Adams," she greeted, genuine pleasure in her voice. "James, Elizabeth, I'm so glad you could join us today." Elizabeth slid from her pony without waiting for help, her excitement palpable. James followed with more reserve but equal interest. Isaac dismounted slowly, feeling oddly out of place among the families saying their goodbyes. "Children," Rebecca addressed her new pupils, "why don't you go inside and find seats? We'll be starting soon." As the children filed in, Rebecca turned to Isaac. "Thank you for bringing them." "It means more than you know." Isaac shifted uncomfortably. "It's just for today, to see if it suits." Rebecca nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Of course, you're welcome to stay and observe if you'd like." The offer surprised him. "I wouldn't want to disrupt your teaching." "Not at all." Many parents stay the first day, especially with younger children. Isaac hesitated, torn between the desire to keep watch over his children and the need to maintain distance from this woman whose confidence both irritated and intrigued him. "I have work to do," he said finally, the excuse weak even to his own ears. Rebecca didn't challenge him. "They'll be safe here, Mr. Adams, I promise. School ends at 3. Isaac nodded, unable to voice the fear that gripped him, the fear of letting go, of trusting another person with what remained of his heart. He mounted his horse, and with one last look at the schoolhouse door through which his children had disappeared, rode back toward his ranch, alone for the first time in 3 years. The hours stretched endlessly. Isaac worked himself to exhaustion, mending fences, checking cattle, cleaning the barn to a degree it hadn't seen since Sarah was alive. Anything to keep his mind from wandering to the schoolhouse, to his children, to Rebecca Jones with her direct gaze and challenging words. When it was time to collect them, he arrived early, waiting outside with other parents. The school door opened and children poured out, among them James and Elizabeth, their faces animated in a way he barely recognized. His heart clenched at the sight. "Pa," Elizabeth called, running to him. "Miss Jones says I read very well for my age, and she's going to teach us about maps and far-off places, and she knows about cattle breeding," James interrupted, his usual reserve forgotten in his enthusiasm. "Her father had a farm in Ohio. She said I asked good questions." Isaac absorbed their excitement, feeling something shift within him. "That sounds good," he managed, helping Elizabeth onto her pony. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, watching the reunion with a smile that held no triumph, only genuine pleasure. She raised a hand in greeting, and Isaac found himself nodding in return, a silent acknowledgement of something he wasn't yet ready to name. The ride home was filled with chatter as his children recounted every detail of their day. Isaac listened, truly listened, for the first time in longer than he could remember. Their voices, bright with discovery and connection, were a balm to his wounded soul. That night, after they were asleep, Isaac sat on the porch, staring up at the vast Montana sky. The stars seemed brighter somehow, the silence less oppressive. He took Sarah's letter from his pocket, read her words again, and for the first time felt not just the pain of loss but also the whisper of possibility. The next morning, without discussion, they prepared for school again. It became their new routine morning chores, the ride to town, the brief interaction with Rebecca at the schoolhouse steps. Each day, Isaac found it harder to ride away, found himself lingering a little longer, watching as she engaged with the children, her passion for teaching evident in every gesture. 2 weeks into this new arrangement, Isaac arrived at the school to find Rebecca alone in the yard, sweeping the steps. The other children had already been collected, but James and Elizabeth were nowhere to be seen. "Mr. Adams," she greeted him, a slight tension in her voice. "James and Elizabeth are inside. James had a bit of trouble today." Alarm shot through him. "What happened?" "He got into a fight with Billy Thompson. Nothing serious," she added quickly, seeing his expression. "Billy made a comment about your wife. James was defending her memory." Isaac felt the familiar pain, sharper for being unexpected. "I see. I've spoken to both boys. Billy has apologized, but James is still upset. I thought it best to wait for you." Isaac nodded, appreciating her discretion. "Thank you." He found his children inside the schoolroom, James sitting rigid at his desk, Elizabeth beside him, her small hand on his arm. The sight of them, united in their shared grief, tore at Isaac's heart. "Time to go home," he said quietly. The ride back was silent, the earlier pattern broken. At home, Elizabeth went to feed the chickens without being asked, while James stood uncertainly in the yard. "Do you want to talk about it?" Isaac asked his son. James looked up, his young face a mask of controlled emotion. "Billy said Ma left because she didn't want to be with us anymore. Said that's what his pa told him." Rage flared in Isaac, white-hot and consuming. The urge to ride to the Thompson place and confront the man was nearly overwhelming, but the lost look in his son's eyes anchored him to the present. "Your mother loved us more than anything in this world," Isaac said, his voice rough with emotion. "She didn't choose to leave us, James. She got sick, you know that." "I know," James whispered. "But sometimes I can't remember her face anymore, Pa. I'm forgetting her." The confession broke something open in Isaac. He knelt before his son, taking his small shoulders in his hands. "I see her every day in you and your sister. In your kindness, your strength. She's never really gone, son. Not as long as we remember how much she loved us." James's composure finally broke, and he fell into his father's arms, sobbing as he hadn't done since the funeral. Isaac held him tight, his own tears falling freely for the first time in years. Elizabeth appeared beside them, her face crumpling at the sight, and Isaac opened his arm to include her in the embrace. They stayed that way, the three of them huddled together in the yard, sharing their grief openly for the first time. When the tears finally subsided, Isaac felt lighter somehow, as if a burden had been partially lifted. "What would Ma want us to do now?" Elizabeth asked, her voice small but steady. Isaac thought of Sarah's letter, of her plea for joy. "She'd want us to live, Lizzie. Really live, not just survive." The next day, Isaac rode alone to the schoolhouse during lunch hour. He found Rebecca sitting under a tree, reading while the children played nearby. She looked up in surprise as his shadow fell across her book. "Mr. Adams, is everything all right?" "Isaac," he said, the words coming with difficulty. "My name is Isaac." A smile touched her lips. "Isaac, then, are you here about James? He's doing much better today. I came to thank you for handling it well and to apologize for not being more forthcoming about our situation." Rebecca closed her book. "There's no need to apologize. Grief is a private journey." "Not always," he said, thinking of the previous evening's shared tears. "Sometimes it needs to be witnessed." She studied him, something softening in her expression. "Would you like to sit?" He hesitated only briefly before lowering himself to the ground beside her. "My wife Sarah died 3 years ago. Influenza took her while I was away. The children were with her. They watched her die." Rebecca's hand moved as if to touch his arm but stopped short. "I'm so sorry. That's a heavy burden for all of you. I thought I was protecting them by keeping them close, but I was just keeping them isolated in grief." He looked across the schoolyard to where James was playing a game with several boys, including, he noted with surprise, Billy Thompson. "You've given them something I couldn't." "Children are resilient," Rebecca said gently, "more than we sometimes give them credit for. They need room to grow to form their own connections." Isaac nodded, watching as Elizabeth joined a group of girls jumping rope. "Sarah would have liked you," he said suddenly, the words surprising him as much as Rebecca. She blushed slightly, the color becoming on her freckled skin. "That's quite a compliment." She valued education, wanted the children to have opportunities we didn't. He paused, gathering his courage. "Would you come to dinner at our ranch? The children would like it, and I'd like to hear more about your teaching methods." The invitation hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Rebecca's smile was warm, genuine. "I'd be honored, Isaac." 2 days later, Rebecca arrived at the ranch, riding her chestnut mare. Isaac had spent the morning in an unfamiliar state of nervous anticipation, cleaning the house more thoroughly than it had been in years. The children were equally excited, Elizabeth picking wildflowers for the table, James insisting on wearing his best shirt. "Welcome to our home," Isaac said as he helped her dismount, his hand lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary on her arm. Rebecca looked around with genuine interest. "It's beautiful land you have here. I can see why you love it." Dinner was a revelation. The house, so long shrouded in quiet, rang with conversation and, remarkably, laughter. Rebecca had a gift for drawing people out, asking questions that sparked stories and memories. Isaac found himself recounting tales of his early days on the ranch, of Sarah's determination to create a garden in the harsh Montana soil, of the children's first steps and words. "Pa used to play the harmonica," Elizabeth revealed, her eyes bright, "before Ma got sick." Isaac felt a pang of guilt. The harmonica had remained untouched in a drawer since Sarah's death. "You still play?" Rebecca asked gently. Isaac shook his head. "Not for a long time. Music brings comfort," she said. "My father played fiddle. After my mother died, his playing was sometimes the only thing that made me feel close to her again." The shared confidence hung in the air between them, a bridge of understanding. After dinner, Rebecca insisted on helping with the dishes despite Isaac's protests. They worked side by side in companionable silence, their hands occasionally brushing as they passed plates and cups. "Thank you for tonight," she said as they finished. "It meant a great deal to be invited into your home." "It's been too quiet here for too long," Isaac admitted. "You brought something back that we'd lost." Their eyes met, and Isaac felt something stir within him, not a betrayal of Sarah's memory, but a continuation of life, of possibility. The moment was broken by the children calling from the porch, eager to show Rebecca the view of the stars from their land. As they stepped outside, Elizabeth impulsively took Rebecca's hand, leading her to the best spot for stargazing. The simple gesture of trust from his daughter moved Isaac deeply. He watched as Rebecca pointed out constellations, her knowledge once again impressing both children. "It's getting late," Isaac said eventually, noting how Elizabeth was fighting to keep her eyes open. "Time for bed." After tucked in the children, Isaac found Rebecca still on the porch, gazing out at the night. "It's peaceful here," she said as he joined her. "I can see why you chose this place to build your life." "Sarah chose it," Isaac admitted. "I wanted to go further north, but she said this valley felt like home the moment she saw it." Rebecca smiled. "She had good instincts." "She did." Isaac hesitated, then added, "She would have wanted the children to be happy, to laugh again. I forgot that for a while. Grief can make us forget many things, Rebecca said softly, but joy has a way of finding its path back if we let it. As he escorted her to her horse, Isaac found himself reluctant to see her go. Perhaps you could come again. Sunday, after church, we could have a picnic by the creek. If you'd like. The smile that lit her face warmed something long cold within him. I'd like that very much, Isaac. The picnic became a weekly tradition as spring deepened into summer. Rebecca's visits expanded the children's world beyond school lessons, bringing books from her uncle's extensive library, teaching Elizabeth to press flowers, discussing cattle breeding techniques with James. Each visit seemed to bring more light into their lives, more sound into the once silent house. Isaac found himself looking forward to her arrival each Sunday with an anticipation that both exhilarated and frightened him. They developed a friendship that gradually evolved into something deeper, built on mutual respect and shared values. When their hands touched now, neither was quick to pull away. One warm July afternoon, as they sat by the creek watching the children wade in the shallow water, Rebecca turned to him with uncharacteristic hesitation. Isaac, there's something I need to tell you. I've received a letter from the school board in Helena. They've offered me a position for the fall term. The words hit him like a physical blow. You're leaving. I haven't decided yet. She met his gaze steadily. It's an opportunity I would have jumped at 3 months ago, but now, he prompted, scarcely breathing. Now there are reasons to stay that I hadn't anticipated. Her voice was soft, vulnerable in a way he'd never heard before. Hope and fear warred within him. Rebecca, I don't want you to go. She reached for his hand, her touch a promise. Then ask me to stay, Isaac. Not just for the children's sake. The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility. Stay, he whispered finally, for all of us, for me. Her smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Yes, the following weeks passed in a blur of joy and rediscovery. Isaac found himself laughing again, truly laughing, as he hadn't done since Sarah died. The children blossomed under the combined attention of their father and the woman who was becoming increasingly important in their lives. One evening in late August, Rebecca brought a fiddle to the ranch, a surprise that delighted the children. My uncle found it in his attic, she explained. It belonged to a patient who passed away years ago, no family to claim it. As twilight settled over the land, Rebecca began to play, the sweet, mournful notes filling the yard with magic. Elizabeth, emboldened by the music, began to dance, her movements graceful and uninhibited. James watched for a moment before joining her, awkward at first, then with increasing confidence. Isaac stood on the porch, watching his children dance in the fading light, their faces illuminated with joy. Rebecca caught his eye from where she sat playing, a question in her gaze. The harmonica had been in his pocket for weeks now, carried like a talisman but unused. With trembling fingers he drew it out, felt its familiar weight in his hand. The first notes were hesitant, rusty from disuse, but gradually gained strength as he remembered Sarah's favorite song. Rebecca smiled, adjusting her playing to complement his. The harmony they created seemed to vibrate through the air, weaving around the dancing children, binding them all together in a moment of perfect understanding. Laughter bubbled up from deep within Isaac, surprising him with its ease. The sound mingled with the music, with the children's giggles, with the gentle hum of the summer evening. In that moment, he felt Sarah's presence not as a ghost of grief but as a blessing, a permission to embrace life again. Later, after the children were asleep, Isaac and Rebecca sat on the porch steps, shoulders touching, comfortable in their growing closeness. I thought I'd forgotten how, Isaac said quietly. How to play? Rebecca asked, her hand finding his in the darkness. how to laugh, how to feel anything but loss. He turned to her, his heart full. You brought music back into our lives, Rebecca. You reminded me that loving again doesn't betray what came before. In the silver light of the moon, he leaned forward and kissed her, a gentle promise of a future neither had expected to find. When they parted, her eyes shone with unshed tears of happiness. I love you, Isaac Adams, she whispered. You and those remarkable children. And we love you, he replied, the words coming easily, honestly. Will you stay? Not just in Whitehawk, but here with us. Be a family with us. Her answer was in her kiss, in the way she moved into his arms as if coming home. Above them, the Montana stars witnessed their embrace, the same stars that had looked down on Isaac's grief, and now blessed his joy. The wedding took place in October, when the cottonwood tree that sheltered Sarah's grave was ablaze with golden leaves. It was a simple ceremony, attended by friends from town and neighboring ranches. Elizabeth served as maid of honor, proudly wearing a crown of autumn flowers that Rebecca had helped her make. James stood tall beside his father, holding the rings with solemn importance. As Rebecca spoke her vows, her voice clear and certain in the crisp fall air, Isaac felt the final pieces of his heart mend, not erasing the scars but incorporating them into something new and strong. The harmonica in his pocket was a reminder of what had been lost, and what had been found again: the courage to love, to risk, to build a future on the foundation of the past. That evening, as Rebecca danced with both children in the yard of what was now truly their home, Isaac played the harmonica, his music joining their laughter in a promise kept to Sarah and to himself. To remember joy, to cherish love, to live fully in each precious moment they were given. As darkness fell, with his new wife in his arms and his children safe beside them, Isaac Adams looked up at the star-filled sky and silently thanked the woman who had taught him to love the first time, and the remarkable woman who had taught him to love again. The cowboy who had forgotten how to laugh now held happiness in his heart once more, a happiness built on memory, on courage, and on the unexpected gift of a second chance.